Grandma's hidden photo exposed a 40-year family secret. The photograph was hidden behind a loose piece of cardboard in the bottom of an old wooden sewing box. For 40 years, nobody knew it was there. Not my daughters, not my son, not even my husband before he passed away. I had put it there myself, folded inside a small envelope and pushed beneath a collection of buttons, old threads, and scraps of fabric. I never expected anyone to find it, especially not my granddaughter. Her name was Emily. She was 26 when she found it. It happened on an ordinary Saturday afternoon when she came to help me clean out the sewing room. I was 72 then, and I had finally admitted that I had accumulated too many things. "Grandma, you have enough thread to sew clothes for the entire neighborhood," Emily joked. I laughed. "That's because your grandmother never throws away anything useful." She held up a piece of yellow fabric. That might be useful someday." She smiled. "You've been saying that for 20 years. I watched her sort through the drawers. That room held pieces of my life. My mother's sewing scissors. My husband's old measuring tape. Buttons from clothes my children had worn when they were young. There were memories everywhere. I had spent decades putting things away. Some because I couldn't use them anymore. Others because I couldn't bear to throw them away. Emily pulled the wooden sewing box from the bottom shelf. "This one." I looked up. My heart skipped. "Not that one's." She stopped. "Why?" "It's just old." I stood up too quickly. She noticed. "Grandma, are you okay?" "Yes." I walked toward her, but before I reached the box, she had already opened it. Inside were spools of thread, needles, buttons, and folded pieces of cloth. She laughed. "See, nothing dangerous." Then she lifted the cardboard lining at the bottom. I froze. She found the envelope. It was yellow with age. There was no name written on it. Emily looked at me. "What's this?" "Put it back." She looked surprised. "Grandma, please." Something in my voice made her stop smiling. She held the envelope carefully. "I won't open it." I nodded. But then she looked at me again. "Why have you kept it hidden?" I didn't answer. She sat down on the floor. I slowly lowered myself into the chair beside her. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Emily asked, "Is there a photograph inside?" I looked at the envelope. "Yes." "Of who?" I swallowed. "Someone from before you were born." She smiled gently. "That doesn't explain why you're scared of it." I looked toward the window. There are some memories that don't become easier simply because time passes. We tell ourselves that 40 years is long enough. Sometimes it isn't. Finally, I said, "Open it." Emily looked at me. "Are you sure?" I nodded. She carefully opened the envelope. She pulled out one photograph. It was black and white, slightly bent at the corners. She stared at it. Then her expression changed. "Grandma." "What?" "Who is this man?" I looked at the photographs. A young man stood beside me. I was 32 years old. He was smiling, and his hand rested gently on my shoulder. Emily looked from the photograph to me. Why have I never seen this picture? I took a slow breath. Because nobody in this family has seen it for 40 years. She turned the photograph over. There was something written on the back. 2 things. a name, and a date. Thomas, October 14. Emily looked at me. Who is Thomas? I looked at the young man's face. For 40 years, I had tried not to think about that smile. But memory has a strange way of waiting patiently. I finally said, he was the man I was supposed to marry. Emily stared at me as though I had suddenly become a stranger. The man you were supposed to marry. I nodded. She looked back at the photographs. Then why did you marry Grandpa? I didn't answer immediately. That was the question I had been expecting for 40 years. And somehow, hearing it from my granddaughter made it harder than I had imagined. Emily placed the photograph on the table between us. Grandma, who was Thomas? I sat down. He was my first love. She waited. I could see she wanted the whole story. But some stories are difficult to tell because once you begin, you cannot decide which parts the listener should know. Did Mom know about him? No. Did Grandpa know? I looked at her. Not everything. Emily frowned. What does that mean? I folded my hands in my lap. It means your grandfather knew I had loved someone before him. He didn't know what happened. She was quiet for a moment. Why didn't you tell anyone? Because I thought I was protecting my family. From what? I looked at the photograph again. From the truth. I took a breath. Thomas and I were engaged. Her eyes widened. You were engaged? Yes. How long? Almost a year. She looked at the photograph again. You loved him. I did. What happened? I turned toward the window. I smiled sadly. But sometimes people make decisions when they're frightened. What did you do? I stayed. And he left. Yes. She looked confused. Then why did you marry Grandpa? I lowered my eyes. Because your grandfather was kind. That doesn't sound like the whole reason. No. I looked at her. It wasn't. I told her about the years that followed. Thomas moved away. For a while, we exchanged letters. At first, I answered everyone. Then my parents became ill. There were responsibilities at home. My father didn't approve of Thomas. He believed I should forget him and build a stable life. Then I met my future husband again. He was patient. He was dependable. He made my family feel secure. And I was tired of waiting for a life that seemed impossible. So you chose Grandpa. I did. Did you love him? I thought about the question carefully. Yes. Emily looked surprised. But differently. Yes. I smiled faintly. Your grandfather became my husband. He became the father of my children. He was there for me through 40 years of life. Then why keep Thomas's photograph? I didn't answer. Emily looked at me. Grandma, I finally said, because loving someone once doesn't mean you stop remembering them. She was quiet. But did you ever see Thomas again? I looked at the photographs. Yes. Her eyes widened. When did you first see him again? 40 years ago. What happened? I picked up the photographs. That was the day Thomas came back into my life. Emily's face changed. What happened? I looked at the date written on the back. October 14. She frowned. That's the date on the photograph. Yes. That was the day he came back. Yes. I took a breath. He had been injured in a car accident. Emily looked concerned. Was he okay? He survived. I paused. But he wasn't the same. Thomas had spent several days in the hospital. I visited him once. Just once. He asked me to leave with him. He said he still loved me. He said we could start over somewhere else. I remember sitting beside his hospital bed, listening to him make promises we had once made to each other. For a moment, I wanted to say yes. Then I thought about my parents, my responsibilities, the man I was already engaged to, the life everyone expected me to build. And I realized something painful. I had already made my choice. I told Thomas I couldn't go with him. Emily looked at me. Was that why you never told Grandpa? I was afraid he would think I had married him because Thomas had failed to come back. But you loved Thomas. I had loved him. I corrected myself. By then, I had chosen your grandfather. Emily was quiet. So what was the family secret? I looked down at the photographs. Thomas came back into my life again years later. Her eyes widened. He did. Yes. Why? Because your mother was sick. Emily's expression changed. I took a breath. Your mother was born with a heart condition. Emily became still. She had a serious problem as a baby. The doctors weren't sure how she would do. I remembered those years vividly. The hospital visits, the tests, the fear. Your grandfather was terrified. So was I. But eventually, your mother grew stronger. She lived a normal life. She had you. And for decades, nobody needed to know what happened before she was old enough to remember. Where does Thomas fit into that? I looked at Emily. He was the one who drove me to the hospital when your mother became sick. Emily stared at me. Thomas helped you. Yes. Then why hide that? Because I was afraid your grandfather would misunderstand. I had never told my husband that Thomas had returned to my life again. Not because there was anything romantic between us anymore. There wasn't. But because I knew how easily an old name could reopen an old wound. So the secret wasn't that Thomas was my mother's father, Emily said. No. I looked at her. The secret was that he came back. And you never told anyone. I thought I was protecting everyone. Emily was silent. Then she asked, "Do you regret it?" I looked at the photograph for a long time. Yes. She waited. Not because I chose your grandfather, I said. I loved him, I built a life with him, I have no shame about that. I folded the photograph carefully. I regret that I allowed fear to make me believe silence was always the kindest choice. Emily reached for my hand. Why keep the photograph all these years? I smiled sadly. Because sometimes a photograph isn't proof of what you want to remember. I looked at her. Sometimes it's proof of what you survived. Emily squeezed my hand. And for the first time in 40 years, I felt as though the secret was no longer mine to carry alone. The next morning, Emily called her mother. "Mom, can I ask you something?" Her mother laughed. "Of course, what is it?" "Did you ever hear the name Thomas?" There was silence on the other end. Not a long silence, but long enough for Emily to notice. "Why are you asking about him?" Emily sat down. Grandma showed me a photograph. Another silence. Then her mother said, "What photograph?" Emily didn't answer immediately. I think you should talk to Grandma. Her mother exhaled. Is she okay? She is. Then what's wrong? Nothing is wrong. Emily paused. But there are things about the family that I think you should hear from her. That afternoon, her mother came to my house. She walked into the kitchen and looked at me. Why didn't you tell me? I knew immediately what she meant. I reached for the photograph. I was afraid. She sat across from me. Afraid of what? That you would think I had lied to you. You did keep something from me. Yes, but you didn't lie about who my father was. No. She looked at the photograph. Thomas. I nodded. I remember his name. You do? Your father told me once. I looked surprised. When? Years ago, after Grandpa died. That stopped me. You know. Not everything. She explained that her father had mentioned Thomas once, but never told her the full story. He said there was a man you had loved before him. I looked down. That's all. That was all. For the first time, I realized something. The secret I had believed I was protecting everyone from had never completely disappeared. It had simply been passed down in fragments. A name here. A memory there. A question nobody asked. My daughter picked up the photographs. Why did you keep this? I answered honestly. Because I couldn't throw it away. Were you still in love with him? No. The answer came quickly. I loved the person he had been, but I had already built my life with your father. She nodded slowly. Then why were you ashamed of the photograph? I looked at her. I wasn't ashamed of him. I touched the edge of the picture. I was afraid of what people would think. She became quiet. Then she smiled sadly. Mom, you spent 40 years protecting us from something that wasn't dangerous. I felt tears gather in my eyes. Maybe. No, she said gently, definitely. Emily watched the two women sitting across from each other. For the first time, she saw her mother not simply as her mother, but as a woman who had once been young and uncertain. And she saw me not simply as the grandmother who had always known the answers, but as someone who had made difficult choices with the information and courage she had at the time. The photograph had changed nothing about who our family was. It had changed what we understood about how that family had been formed. Later that evening, Emily placed the photograph back on the table. Grandma, she said, what do you want to do with it now? I smiled. For 40 years, I thought I had to hide it. I looked at my daughter. Now I think it can simply be a photograph. No more hiding. No more explanations. No more fear. Just a picture of a young woman who had once stood beside someone she loved before life took her in another direction. And somehow that was enough. After 40 years of keeping that photograph hidden, I finally understood something I had been too afraid to admit. The secret had never protected my family as much as I had believed. It had protected me. It protected me from uncomfortable questions. It protected me from having to explain choices I had made when I was young. And for many years, that felt easier. But secrets have a way of changing as time passes. What begins as protection can slowly become a burden. After Emily and my daughter left that afternoon, I sat alone at the kitchen table. The photograph was still there. I picked it up. Thomas was smiling at the camera. I was standing beside him, young and hopeful, with no idea what the next 40 years would bring. I looked at that young woman for a long time. Then I smiled. She had made choices. Some had worked out. Some had hurt. But she had done the best she could with the life she understood at the time. I didn't need to judge her anymore. That evening, Emily called. "Grandma." "Yes." "Are you okay?" I smiled. "I am." "Do you regret telling me?" "No." "Why?" "Because you didn't look at me differently." Emily laughed softly. "Why would I?" "Because I was afraid you would." "Grandma, everyone has a past." I closed my eyes. Those simple words meant more to me than she probably realized. Everyone has a past. Some parts are beautiful. Some are painful. Some are complicated. And some are simply things we don't know how to talk about. I thought about my husband. He had loved me. I had loved him. Our marriage had been real. The existence of Thomas did not erase 40 years of memories. It did not erase the children we raised. It did not erase the life we built. The photograph wasn't proof that my marriage had been a lie. It was proof that I had lived a life before becoming someone's wife and mother. I finally understood that those two truths could exist together. The next weekend, I gave the photograph to Emily. She looked surprised. "Are you sure?" "Yes." "You don't want to keep it?" "I've kept it for 40 years." I smiled. "Maybe it belongs to the family now." She held it carefully. "What should I do with it?" "Whatever feels right." She looked at the photograph. "I'm going to keep it safe." I nodded. Then I added, "But don't hide it." She looked at me. "Why?" "Because I spent 40 years hiding it." I touched her hand. "And I don't want you to learn that every difficult truth has to be buried." Emily smiled. "I won't." I watched her place the photograph inside her purse. For the first time, I felt no fear. Only relief. I hadn't changed the past. I hadn't rewritten my life. I had simply stopped hiding one small piece of it. And perhaps that was the lesson I had needed all along. Some secrets protect us for a while. But when the danger is gone, sometimes the secret is the only thing still keeping us afraid. I was finally ready to let that fear go.